Welcome to the webinar. We'll get started shortly. Before we begin, here's how to earn CPE credit. Unlike traditional CPE webinars, there are no polling questions or attendance checks during the presentation. Instead, you will demonstrate your knowledge by taking a brief multiple-choice quiz in the Earmark app. Search for the free Earmark app from the App Store or Google Play Store, or scan the QR code on the screen. Open the app and create an account. Be sure to use a valid email address because we'll email you your CPE certificates. From the home screen, scroll down to find the course. You can also tap the magnifying glass icon to search for the course. Tap on the course artwork, then the Enroll button. On the Course tab, you'll find the recording and quiz questions. If you don't see the quiz yet, don't worry. We'll email you when the quiz is available. Complete the quiz to earn your CPE certificate. If you have questions or need help, email us anytime at support@earmarkcpe.com. Now, on to the webinar.
Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Secure Document Exchange, Best Practices and Tips from the Experts at ShareFile. I'm Joel from the Earmark team, and if you have any questions or concerns, please use the comments section. And with that, I'll turn it over to Stacy Schrader and Adrienne Lester.
Thanks, Joel. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today about our webinar that's all about secure document exchange. My name is Stacy Schrader, and I'm the lead product marketing manager here at ShareFile.
And I'm Adrienne Lester, a senior sales director here leading our business services team, selling almost exclusively to accounting customers.
In today's session, we'll go over how secure document exchange is ever relevant to the accounting profession, and also go over why data security matters, highlighting the impact it has on every firm. And then we all know that unsecure behavior happens pretty often, so we'll outline what really leads to those risky actions, and then help you pinpoint where issues may exist in your own workflows. And then lastly, we'll give you some tips and best practices to tighten up your security measures, and then also help you identify solutions that make data security a little bit easier on your staff and your clients. And as you all just heard, this webinar is being offered for CPE credit. So we do have a few learning objectives that you'll get through today's programming. First, you'll be able to recognize the critical role of secure document exchange while maintaining confidentiality and integrity for your clients. Then we'll also delve into the various factors that contribute to unsecure document sharing. That includes common pitfalls like human errors, technical vulnerabilities, and emerging cybersecurity threats. And then we'll also learn actionable tips and techniques for establishing robust security standards and cover encryption methods, access control mechanisms, and then protocols that you can follow to help spruce up your security. And then lastly, assess any key criteria for selecting ideal document exchange solutions. And I know all of you are extremely busy this time of year, and you're also exchanging a lot of sensitive financial documents, either from the clients or with your staff. This also means that this time of year improves and heightens sort of the security risk that your firm has, and then a lot of that data could end up in the wrong hands, putting your firm and most importantly, your clients at risk. In fact, we've seen many firms, especially this year, trying to spruce up their cybersecurity more than ever. But what exactly and why does security document exchange matter, and why you should be focusing on that? So I mentioned it was a big priority that we've seen through our customers and all through the industry and the market, that they're trying to improve their security measures. But ShareFile is also seeing that the possibility of a data breach is the driving force for this focus. So you're not only risking that firm-related data that's being passed around, but also that client data too. And you all have that professional responsibility in ensuring your client's data stays secure while you're dealing with them with the service, and then of course after the service too. So your priority on security will also lend well building into that client satisfaction and the client trust. So ensuring you're enhancing that client retention rate as well. Some stats for you on the side. We see that 57% admit that cybersecurity risk is a top challenge they're facing this year. More than 2/3 of IT leaders say their organizations are highly concerned about the possibility of a data breach. And then you can also understand why this is such a big issue. We're seeing that the daily cost of a data breach in the US is over $8,500 a day, which can be a big impact to any kind of firm. And then the main issue we see is the staff are not taking the standard precautions when it comes to security practices. So even if you have those secure tools in hand, maybe very complex secure tools, we see staff still shortcutting areas, especially when they're requesting clients to email them a list of personal sensitive files, and then conditioning those clients to then interact with them like that during the entirety of the service. And then also sending emails themselves inside of your firm with sensitive data as file attachments. So the reason why we see these shortcuts is because these tools that you may have in place that are super secure are not easily integrated into the way that your staff likes to work. So sometimes the securest solutions are those that the staff will actually use. And I know, Adrienne, we've had many accounting firms in ShareFile come to us with a similar story about this issue as well.
Yeah, I went back a little bit in my mental archives to come up with a really extreme example of what I've seen. I have a lot of examples, and so I'll kind of buffer this with maybe what I see most often as well. But this was a woman that I had a pretty in-depth conversation right before tax season. I don't know, it was like 6 years ago. She was kind of going back and forth. Do I decide to bring in a new technology right before tax season? Some of you may have been asking yourselves the same question. She ultimately decided not to do it. It was kind of too late. And we decided to resume our conversation post tax season. Pretty traditional accounting practice. It was pretty small, 100 clients. And unfortunately, during that tax season, she did suffer a breach. And I think why hers was worse, I guess, than in other situations was that not only was the information breached by way of an email communication was intercepted by a bad actor. It was actually the information that was compromised as a part of that. So sometimes you may suffer a breach and then it's actually not based on malice intent and no one does anything with it. But in this particular case, it was worst case scenario, right? Now she's going to have, she's required really at this point to notify all of her clients that she's been, that one of the particular customers or her clients was compromised. There was civil litigation that was required. In this case, the IRS actually requested that she not resume any electronic communication with her client base until the breach was solved. And so I think what's more common here, where this is a really sad tale, because ultimately, based on the reputational damage, she ended up not pursuing practice past then. I think what typically happens is, an accidental, something gets shared and a breach occurs, and you may suffer some reputational damage that you need to go out and communicate to your client base. But the compromised information doesn't get into the wrong hands. If that does happen, there are legal fees, there's forensic investigations that have to happen. And that's when it gets kind of gnarly. So it matters, I think is the big point here. And, obviously coming to this course is hopefully going to get you on the right track to make sure you're not one of these stories. So what leads to unsecure sharing? We came up with 4 different categories that we wanted to walk you through and help you understand kind of each of these. So efficiency and convenience is one that Stacy really touched on. And this is just the nature, it feels like, of the day and age that we live in. People like to do things fast. People like to do things hopefully in the most productive way. And so really the most secure product that you'll have is kind of a blend of both. You want it to be efficient and convenient with all of the security measures inside of that. So 80% of data breaches were involved compromised credentials. So again, this is kind of shortcutting some of the maybe the traditional protocols that you may enlist within your business. People also are people, right? They like to repeat old bad habits, whether that's using the same password over and over again. And a lot of times employees just don't frankly understand the risks associated with file sharing best practices. So the blend of getting a great product in place is where it's going to meet those security protocols while also making it easy to use. The moment you bring in something really, really locked down, you just may not have a lot of reception from your employees on that.
Yeah, and I think, Adrienne, we see with the industry, with the increase in business growth, and then also the counterside of the decrease in staffing shortages has made this reality even more present. So I know all of you are working as fast as you can, and I'm like the same way. I love to find efficiency where I can, and I'll shortcut where I can too. But sometimes that can be putting your data at risk. Just quickly sending an email with the file attachment may seem pretty harmless. But it's important to consider what kind of behavior you do conduct during your busy season or when you're working really fast to really understand where you may have some of those small vulnerabilities.
The next place is in staff awareness. I kind of touched on this a little bit before. It's just simply not understanding the risk, right? Most of those that are on this call probably went to school to become an excellent CPA, not to understand all of the security risks out there. And so, there may just not be an understanding of, I'm here as a purveyor of sensitive information, and I need to take every precaution that I can to make sure I'm handling it correctly. And so, 47% of employees have admitted to accidentally exposing sensitive information. A lot of this is not malice intent, right? It's just moving too fast, trying to get something done, right? Tax season is already stressful enough, just trying to move through it, and doing something just by accident happens really is the most common way we see it. We see this happening.
Yeah, and I think this is just a huge blocker as well for firms. So an example of a recent firm is they weren't super tech savvy when they came to us, and some of their staff, and this is probably a similar story that a lot of you go through, their staff struggled with handling the new security technology they were tasked with, because it wasn't the easiest to navigate. They always had to remember to open something and remember to click this, click that, and then go back here. So it was really disrupting their workflow. So it's key to remember that stressing the importance of technology and external processes is essential. And remembering tools that may be the securest may not be the securest for your staff if they aren't going to use it. So it's something that we see time after time, and understanding and building that awareness with your staff is really what is going to make a difference here.
Yeah, and so the third up is the unintentional sharing. So a lot of these sound similar because they probably are. This is a little bit different. So public links are something that are becoming more and more prolific. They're easy to distribute, which can also lead to some accidental sharing as well. Of course, it goes back to just speed and ease. And there's the accidental sharing something inadvertently with a person that you didn't intend. So this is more of, oops, I'm sending it to the wrong person. I was actually not a victim, I guess, in this case, but the accidental receiver of another Adrienne's W-2 at one point. And obviously, I let her know at that point that I don't think I was supposed to receive this. Here you go. But that's how easy and quick these things can happen. And again, 22% of all data breaches are actually human error involved.
Yeah, and it's actually funny you mentioned that too, because you're not a bad actor, but what if someone that may have potentially been a bad actor, or think about maybe if you were thinking about, okay, how often does this happen? Because it does. I think everyone here has received an email before that wasn't intended for them. But having that information and it's not locked down inside of that email can be a huge risk, and you immediately lose your client's trust and then your reputation as well, even if nothing happened, because I would be concerned if I received someone else's as well.
Totally. The last, data scraping, is maybe the most technical on the list. I mentioned just the proliferation of public links. That's just the easiest way to get information out. And typically public links are going to require or will carry some level of encryption, and kind of that makes everybody feel a little bit better. But what's happened is that search engines are now often indexing public links, and I'm going to try and break this down as best I can. But basically, by search engines indexing it, it's made it easier for bad actors to get in there and scour those websites for these public links, and effectively automating the ability to get access to the content that lies beneath. And so that's going to make up anywhere from 10 to 30% of the website traffic. So it's a lot of stuff that's out there that lives in these. Encryption is a great way to send it, but I think there's other things that we'll kind of get to about how do you secure those public links even more outside of just the encryption, because even then, bad actors are figuring out a way to get into those.
Yeah, and this one, Adrienne, has become more widely used by bad actors lately. I will say that. And it may sound pretty outlandish and unlikely, but it happens way more often than it ever has before. So that's why ensuring you're protecting your links if you're sharing documents with this method.
So now that we've kind of covered what the heck unsecure sharing is, we want to get you to a point where you're feeling more equipped and ready to take on some of the things that we've discussed. So really, the tips here are maybe starting with some pre-work for the firm. How you actually bring a client into your best practices, your tools within your firm is a really great place to start, right? So how do you typically communicate how you like to engage with your clients? Is your staff using these tools as intended, right? Thinking about even vendor selection, is there enablement that is offered to the staff so that they understand how to use the tools most effectively? And then really being able to train your clients in a similar way to help you stay secure is really important. So I think considering all of these really at the outset is really the best place to implement that type of enablement. And, obviously setting those expectations very clearly. It's something that's free, it's a conversation, and hopefully it's this goodwill that's being passed between you as the service provider back to your client, that you're taking into consideration their sensitive information, and you just want to bring the highest level of security that you can to your client base.
Yeah, and this is actually something we see with our accounting customers that have started to build their onboarding process with their clients inside of ShareFile. So they'll send an engagement letter right from ShareFile. And then after the client signs, it automatically kicks off a welcome email. And inside of that welcome email, they have all their precedent on how they're going to work with their CPA or their staff members. And then it'll also give them their information for their client portal setup as well. So this sort of displays right up in the front from the very beginning after they sign all those protocols and training your clients how to work with you. So they're very clear from the very start on how to engage with your firm and during the service. And not only does that help give the client sort of a sense of ease, they're getting that information from the very start, but also cuts down, that risky behavior that doesn't even have a chance to start.
It's that automation. You hear automation so often in a lot of these, I guess, the technology channels.
Mm-hmm.
What the heck is automation? And why is it, doubling down from a security posture perspective? And a lot of times being able to just ensure that staff and clients alike are being able to follow in a very similar regimented way is going to just continue to up-level your security profile.
Absolutely. So we'll jump into more of best practices we recommend you all have in place in your firm when engaging with external parties. So first, requiring a login. So like that example I gave with our customers, requiring the password protected login for the client portal. With a login created, it creates these restrictions on document sharing and viewing inside of a portal, and that sort of limits the document sharing outside of a protected place, and really can uphold your client experience as well. But not only does that strengthen your security posture, but it gives your clients a more enhanced experience when collaborating and working and interacting with their CPA. So all of that is communication, all those those tasks, they can get status updates right in one place. And you're giving the clients a full visibility on their service, and they never really have to leave and go search for something that may exist outside of that single place. So if they remember they had an email about something, or they lost a question and an answer from their CPA, they don't have to go searching, in the mail for it or in their email. It's all in one place, and protected with encryption inside of that as well. And this also sort of really goes hand in hand with document collection too, Adrian, right?
I believe so, because I think the best way to likely secure your document list creation provided by client is going to be within that client portal experience, really consolidating it with, initially that password that's bringing you into the space. You can go back in time, as you mentioned, in previous folders, but being able to secure the exchange of information back and forth as you're doing tax prep, or you're sitting down to do an audit with your client, it's a great way to do it. So, what we typically see are clients exchanging a ton of information via email. And so instead of really going back and forth and, losing emails left, right, and center, really being able to do that in a centralized repository is a really great best practice. And certainly having the additional security within that, it's really a win-win, right? Secure it, having information as to whether clients actually got you the thing that you requested, 4 weeks ago. I know I'm probably on my accountant's naughty list right now. But being able to do that certainly alleviates a lot of pain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say another thing to consider as well that we see a lot of people that forget about is ensuring that you have those granular document management controls on your documents. So even if you're utilizing a PBC list tool to collect those documents, maybe you might be collaborating with someone, with your staff, on those documents to do something else with them, send them to your tax software or wherever they may live. But you don't want to give everyone in your staff the capabilities to view or download. So making sure that you're picking tools and making sure that you're setting these very granular permissions on these documents that contain that sensitive information is crucial. And we see that many IT departments control the management of that permissions with files today, with external roles especially, since that's usually where everything gets locked down when you're trying to share something externally from a secure solution. But staff are really the ones that are dealing with that client and need the hands-on capability of managing that flexibility. So it really comes down to ensuring your team knows the difference between truly sensitive information and how to best exchange that data once they need to share it. So the firm's employees, not only just IT, should be able to add those document permissions to who can view, edit, share externally. But Adrian, I know sometimes we always see these instances where a use of a portal may not always be the right answer. Maybe they're trying to send a one-off document to someone, and they would never share anything with them again. So needing to work outside of a secure portal still exists today, right?
Totally. Yeah. A best practice is really to give you lots of ways to meet your client base where they are. And fortunately or unfortunately, we are still in very much the age of email. Everybody loves to email. It's the first thing I do when I come to work is I open up that Gmail inbox and I go to work. That's what it feels like. If ever asked, I feel like I'm my professional job is an emailer. And so I think really ensuring that from a vendor selection perspective, somebody that brings in a level of encrypted email is really important, because that's just, again, how a lot of people they just want to behave, right? And so, yes, certainly table stakes would be to ensure that any attachments that you're sending back and forth with your clients are encrypted and sent with a password, but also the body of the email, right? A lot of times you might be exchanging just quick identifiable information, even in the body of the email. It's not so much in the attachment itself. Both are important. And I think having that live seamlessly in your email provider is also really important. I don't want to have to go to yet a completely separate instance of call it Gmail or call it another way to send an email, to send something encrypted. I want to do that all natively in the email that I'm really accustomed to.
Mm-hmm. And I would say here, looking at our last one here, a helpful practice to ensure limiting where you're interacting with external parties. So unifying everything in one place, so all the information can be found in a single repository. So a way that ShareFile does this for our customers is through what we call like a dedicated project space to collaborate and organize during that service. So a place similar to that needs to help you understand and your clients understand what documents to submit, sign, and share. It also helps you give a place to ask questions and comments, keeping that communication limited only in that singular place. That also helps, with service time as well, since you're receiving alerts like notifications and reminders on due dates. So nothing really slips through the crack and you're not waiting a month on me to deliver you my W-2. But also reduces the need for shared links. So you don't really have to worry about sharing those one-off links with your customers or your clients, as the approved users only have access to that specific place. And then lastly, documents, files, and messages are also encrypted in there too. Something to really consider, that you don't always have to worry about sending files that need to be encrypted when you're keeping it in a secure place that's already encrypted. So only those authorized users are allowed to get that access, and it really does give that highest layer of security precaution while still making it pretty easy for your client to use as well. So move on to our ideal solution with Adrian.
So how do you kind of tie all of these concepts into a bow, and really make sure you're selecting the right vendor? I've mentioned it before, and maybe I'll just spend a little bit of time here doubling down on this. There's this interesting continuum that you have to consider when you're bringing in a new vendor, or evaluating a solution, I guess, in general. There is one side of the house, which is super locked down, super secure, definitely not putting yourself in any kind of compromise situation. And then the other, of course, is a very commercial, easy to use platform that may not have all the bells and whistles, but maybe you're getting some level of security. And then there's some place probably in between. I bring it up because if you err on the side of super, super locked down, what we've seen a lot, and I know Stacey's kind of alluded to it, is you may have a mutiny among your staff, and they may just find ways around it. And so I bring this up because a lot of vendors talk about a lot of really, really important granular permissions and tools, but I don't think there's as much on the ease of use of the tool. And really, both are important as you're evaluating what you're really going to use, because it's not only for mutiny of your staff, but you want your clients to have that excellent client experience with you as well. Focus on the business at hand, which is really just providing an excellent experience from an accounting perspective, right? Giving them that white glove service to do their taxes or to do their audit work, and not have to worry about, let me go find that email and resend you the password and all of these other crazy steps. So I bring that up because it's always a balance, right? And making sure you're really taking it as a blend of both. So you see three kind of areas here that we're going to focus on. The first is that collaborative cloud solution. So you really want to look for a platform that's going to offer both types of collaboration. So internal and external. Internal being that how do I best interact with my employees and with my staff Am I making it pretty easy to ensure that one group is being able to communicate with the other? And of course, is in that external sharing as well. So how easy is it for a client of mine to get and access their information? Many times we see, one particular team within any given business who's using a wholly different tool from a systems perspective than another, and they can't quite cross the chasm between those two different service providers to be able to share things securely. And so you kind of want to have, another kind of good best practice is to, from a vendor perspective, is to understand the integrations that they offer, and also the ability to kind of traverse between different practice management or different service providers that you have. So I think that's a good one as well. And as we've kind of talked about, is enablement, being able to, or making sure you're training your team on the tools themselves. When you're selecting a vendor, how big is that vendor's online presence? Have they done a lot of YouTube trainings that are, these like little snippets of information that somebody can consume in a couple of minutes, and they learn very quickly how to share something really securely? Do they have an enablement team? What does that vendor team look like to enable you as a customer of theirs, to not only train your staff, but potentially even get on the phone with a client? Do they offer client support? All of these, I think, are really important to bring to the table as you're making a decision.
Yeah, and I think another component to that as well, the layer on top, really is thinking about document-centric workflows. I mean, many of you are dealing with so many different files a day. So thinking about how am I going to make this more efficient while securing at the same time that already fits sort of my processes is really crucial. And looking for that document centricity is very important, especially when it comes to automation. So that's a big trend in the industry, of course, today, as you all know, to increase efficiency. But it also has advantages with securing your documents too. So this is pretty key to ensure the tool you pick is very document-centric with how you want to look at your workflows and your processes to keep your data secure while not interrupting any typical process of getting that done either. So looking at no-code automations is really important too, since not every firm is equipped with, a 10-person IT team setting up all those automations, or most firms don't have anyone setting up these processes and these standardizations for these processes either. So making sure that it's no code, which if you have not heard that term before, meaning that anyone can easily create an automation or rule or trigger to create an easier process inside of a tool. So an example of this would be like setting up the automations around the client onboarding I mentioned earlier. So having those set triggers for what happens after the client signs the engagement letter. So instead of taking those manual processes and taking that letter, either uploading it and emailing it over to yourself or printing it and filing it, making that automation, taking that document to automatically put into the client file. You don't have to manually pull anything. There's no downloading involved, so it doesn't live on your device. It's just a rule and an automation built in to create that automation, or maybe just auto send an email welcoming them to your company and how you work. Any kind of automation that requires just a couple of clicks is going to help your company not only stay secure, but also efficient, which is also important as well. And then also another key component to ensuring your solution is giving both the client and the staff complete visibility on documents is notifications and reminders too. So this is pretty simple to understand, but when you think about the implications when you're always waiting on a client and maybe they emailed you a file and you didn't see that email for 3 days, or likewise with the client, that has huge benefits to setting this up inside of your tool as well. So as soon as you get that document, or as soon as the client sees that you're on to the next process, they're given ease, and then you can get the work done easier and quicker and more securely.
That's awesome. So the last component here is seamless security, which a lot of we've talked about today. So you don't want security really up in your face. That was one of the first things I opened this slide with. you really want it to be in the background, and you want that level of ease of use for your clients, so that they're getting that higher level of experience that you're hopefully going for. You really want the security to be in the background. And so not only kind of thinking of it as the workhorse, maybe behind the scenes, you also don't want something that's going to take a ton of setup, right? As soon as you bring the new solution in, am I going to have to meet with an entire team to figure out the configuration for this thing? Or is it pretty plug and play? And obviously plug and play is going to hopefully be a lot easier to get going on a solution, but also it's not going to require a lot of maintenance down the road to, do I need to think about reconfiguring what I put into place? And so security does not have to mean complexity, as I've mentioned many times before. Getting it, frankly, even some of the automation that Stacy's mentioned, if you can get this to a point where it's just doing the same behaviors over and over again, that in of itself is going to reduce some of that complexity that exists in a lot of these more lockdown solutions. And you want your controls to not affect efficiency. So AI, automation, I think a lot of these are just buzzwords that you're hearing in the industry, but there's ways in which the vendors out there that are already thinking about these to make you go faster while also having a level of security within the files, within the sharing practices. Those are the ones that you really want to keep an eye on or thinking about bringing in, because getting back to more billable hours, getting back to the work at hand, and just having the solution playing in the background is what makes a great use of a tool. So those are the three. I think kind of keeping all of that in mind, we wanted to give a takeaway to everybody on this call that hopefully will help you in evaluating where you are in your own journey from a security perspective. So this QR code will bring you to a check yourself, a data security audit for handling client information. Basically, it is how many pages is it? It's like 7 pages of both content, but also a quiz. So like 17-ish questions to basically grade your firm, grade your company on how well you're doing with security. Have you thought about all of the different things that Stacy and I have taken you through? Maybe not, but it would give you a grade of something like, oh, you're in excellent shape, versus a couple of things to consider as you're kind of going down this journey of just making sure you're in the best position with both your internal and your external sharing. So we invite you all to play with that. So I think for the remainder of our time here, we did want to be able to answer some questions that either we get frequently, or be able to answer any questions from those that have joined us for the webinar that we can also take live.
Looks like we have a question from Rob. So would it be prudent to keep client-sensitive details on a private network service which doesn't have internet capability? So that would probably be a very private way of handling data and very secure, and that obviously has advantages and disadvantages. But I wouldn't say this is necessarily what best practices security would recommend for a number of reasons. It could be internal threat, insiders accessing that information, maybe that work on the staff, or any kind of experience related. Since this is so locked down, I don't know if staff or clients are going to be able to work with it. It sounds very manual. I don't have too much information on this. But I think some of the newer technology have sort of taken where we used to always be to layer on top of more than just VPNs nowadays, to where you have like SSO, MMFA, all of that and additional information and security approaches that sort of layer on top of it, where you can sort of grow beyond just keeping this super locked down, to where if you do have more staff, this would be a lot more usable, and especially very client friendly too, if you need to access or send any files to your clients as well.
Yeah, it's kind of along that same line of thinking of, the most lockdown thing is going to be the most safe and secure. And obviously, Rob, you're probably going to be the one that is prudent around that, right? You're not going to go beyond what you kind of set up as the best practice. So it's a little less risk maybe if you don't have a large staff, like you're kind of operating in that way. But the moment that you need to do some sort of exchange with a client, I'd imagine you're going to have to take yourself out of that private network and do something with it. And I think that's where you need to maybe explore different ways in which to share that. Because I'd imagine if that's just in the kind of, you think of storage at rest and files at rest and files in transit. These are just files at rest, and having them live on a private network is probably the most secure. But I think the reality is those files probably have to leave the confines of that private network every once in a while, and making sure you're thinking through that too. Hopefully that's helpful. Any other questions? Yeah, so this is really a frequently asked question that we get about single sign-on. So SSO, single sign-on, this may be a terminology that you've heard before. And really the question here is, does it actually enhance my security posture? Is it worth me exploring these? I think a couple of things, right? Making sure that if you do have single sign-on, or if it's something that you're really interested in pursuing, making sure the vendor that you're selecting to do file sharing or a client portal with it integrates, or it offers a way to integrate into some of these single sign-on providers. Pretty important, right? But I think the answer to this is mostly yes. So if you guys remember way back on one of our first slides, we talk about a lot of times it's not from bad actors that information gets out. It's really from staff not understanding that they're doing things, or they're setting a really weak password. The beauty of SSO is that it's going to reduce password fatigue. You have one password, and it gets you access to lots of different things within your firm. And frankly, there's just a lot of additional protocols that SSO providers will give you. So you're going to see a decreased risk of phishing. The password management itself, it typically comes with its own level of multi-factor authentication. And so, I don't know, it's forcing a certain behavior, typically like a reset every 90 days. It's giving you a little bit of an element of an elevated experience that, again, I think is worth pursuing if you feel like you're the right size, and this is getting you added benefit and value outside of, just the service itself. Which kind of goes along with this question. If I'm too small of a company to implement a single sign-on solution, can I be just as secure with multi-factor authentication only? So another fun acronym. The moment you walk into the tech space, you get lots and lots of acronyms thrown at you. So here's another one, multi-factor authentication. What the heck is that? If you find yourself kind of in this conundrum of, do I bring in SSO? Am I big enough to really want that? There are vendors out there that have offered multi-factored authentication without the requirement of single sign-on. That's going to give you that extra layer. So what multi-factor is really just, it's not only a password, right? And you've probably been to these types of websites before. You enter a password and then it says, what's your cell phone number? Let me text you something. And then you have to type in the texted value. Really, it's just giving you, it's that extra layer. It's an extra step that's providing the great layer of security for you. And it's typically really cost effective because, as I mentioned before, bringing in a single sign-on provider, there's typically an expense associated with that to bring in yet another vendor. And so if you're not large enough, if you don't think it's necessary as much, using multi-factor is just going to give you that extra level of security that you may be seeking as well.
Yeah, and I see this question from Jacqueline. This is a great question. So we see this a lot, actually. So she's been getting some pushback from a bank, particularly when you resist sending sensitive information via email. And you're asking if any bank email systems are typically extra secure. So, I mean, there's always more and newer technology with especially email protection. However, it's usually people just trying to shortcut some security practices to get the information quicker. So I would use always your best practices in mind and consider sending it a more secure way. And then that would be either if you have ShareFile or another tool, doing it that way, because it's still friendly. Sending externally is just adding an extra layer, because I wouldn't feel comfortable sending my social security number over email to anyone, even if it was a bank. So I would just take precautions still with what your gut's thinking. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's a shame, because you're right. They're a bank, so they should really care a lot about cybersecurity. But kind of goes back to some of the earlier points. Not all staff, not all employees are going to be as informed as we really want them to be.
So how can workflow automations within my tax and accounting software make my business more secure? So we sort of touched on this earlier. So the funny thing about automations is you're getting two benefits out of it. So you're getting, of course, efficiency benefits, but you're also getting the security as well. And it can help with a number of things, really. I mean, this is not an exhaustive list, but top of mind, it can help with standardization with your repeatable processes. So if you introduced automations, it also reduces the risk of human error happening, which is, of course, the common cause of security breaches, as you remember earlier in our presentation. So by automating repetitive tasks, you ensure your data is handled consistently the same way in uniform, and it's set to your standard security protocols as well. Another thing would be encryption. So if you're using automations, it's also followed with that encryption of data as well. So ensuring that sensitive information is stayed protected during that passing of information between system to system. And then also reducing the amount of tools where the data is going. So if you're thinking about a workflow, and especially with a document, if you get it from email, you have to download it, and then it lives on your device. So there's an issue there, especially if it's something sensitive and it's your personal computer. You have to, rework and re-upload that to another tool, and maybe you have to download another file from that tool and take it to another tool. So building those automations, those integrations between systems, it really does enter safe protocol, save you a lot of time, and then the risk of data leaks is very much lower than what it would be with you taking those manual tasks. All righty, I think that's all of our questions today. And I think we're going to kick it over to Joel to close us out.
Thank you so much, Stacy and Adrian, for today's webinar. And thank you to all of our live attendees that came today. And with that, I will send it over to Blake to show you how to earn CPE for this.
Today's webinar has ended. We hope you enjoyed it. To earn CPE for watching, download the free Earmark app. Scan the QR code on the screen to visit the download page. Open the app and create your account. Use a valid email address where you will receive CPE certificates. Then register for the course. You can search for it by tapping on the magnifying glass icon on the home screen and then entering the name of this webinar. If you're attending the live stream of this webinar, keep an eye out for an email letting you know when the quiz is available in the next few days. Pass the quiz to earn your CPE credits. Then tap the button to email yourself a CPE certificate. Stay tuned for more webinars from Earmark. We appreciate you joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.